I don't consider myself a single mom. I I am a single woman, but I'm not a single mom. So
Hey, welcome to Can I Say This? Today we're going to talk about co-parenting. And as you can think, as imagine, co-parenting can be a blessing or it could be a thorn in your side. Dealing with the person that you once had affection with, decided to remove them from your life, but because of your children, you have to continue to work with that person, communicate with that person, and how you manage your children, how you communicate, the boundaries that you set is really the differentiator between a healthy co-parenting situation, a healed situation, and whatever comes next. So we're going to talk today about, we've got four ladies, I guess myself included, who's divorced and have children. And we're going to talk about co-parenting, that it's not babysitting. These are real life conversations and decisions that we have to make. So my first question for you guys today, one of my friends told me, because my ex-husband is involved in my life, I'm not a single mom. I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm curious of your perspective. My mother is also divorced, right? And had no involvement from my dad. So curious, what is your perspective as a divorcee with kids, things like that, involvement or not? Tell me a little bit about what was your definition of a single mom?
So, so I grapple with that terminology, single mom. I'm single, but I'm not a single mom
Mm-hmm.
in my mind because the dad, my ex-husband, is very active
Mm-hmm.
in the lives of his children, and so I don't see myself as a single mom at all.
Okay.
We co-parent really well together. He's moved on with his life. I've moved on with my life. And so when I single to say single parent, I don't. I think that's unfair in
Mm.
my situation to label it as single parenting because I'm definitely not parenting single.
Fair, but now would you say, but you're single, right? You're not in a relationship. You're not
Oh,
married. So by
I'm in a
definition,
relationship.
oh, excuse me. Okay, well, I'm not. Okay, but in theory, right? If you're
Yeah.
not married, you're single,
If you're not married, you're single in
right?
theory. Yes.
Okay, and so, and you're also a mom.
And I am a mom.
But by definition, you would say that you're not a single mom, though, because of the involvement of your ex-husband.
Correct.
Right? Okay, that's fair.
Yep.
What do you guys think?
I agree with Tan. I too feel like I have a pretty healthy relationship with my former spouse, and he too is also involved with the parenting piece. So, I don't consider myself a single mom. I I am a single woman, but I'm not a single mom. So, out of respect for the relationship that my children have with their father,
Mm-hmm.
I don't carry that label.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. What do you say?
For me, it's quite different because I am a single woman and I am a single mom,
Okay.
parenting my child alone.
Mm-hmm.
So her dad is not, unfortunately, a part of her life.
Mm-hmm.
So it it becomes difficult at times being the only responsible party
Mm-hmm.
for everything. When the child is sick, you're there. When the child needs to go to volleyball practice, you're there.
Yeah.
Their wants, their desires, their disappointments, all of those things. The child relies on you as as a single parent, and I don't get that time off as like that me time. Like I have to take it, right? I have to create it for myself because it's not like she's going to her dad's over the weekend or she's going somewhere else. Where she's going is with me.
Yeah.
So just creating that time for yourself is so important as a single mom. And I think we forget about ourselves because we focus so much on the children that we have to kind of schedule in time for us.
Yeah, no, that's really important.
Yeah.
I'll say that for me, when I got my divorce, very different in that I never got that free time, right? My free time, I was like, oh, this is what free time, it was like being a single woman again because I never got that. I got more help when I got divorced than I did when I was married. And so even sometimes I find I feel bad for a lot of most of my friends are married. And so I feel a little like I hold that back because they don't get that break, like you were talking about, right? They don't get that moment for themselves to, like, oh, I got this weekend off or things like that. They don't get that break. And that is huge, right? But I think it's important as single moms or even, or not, to take that refresher so you can be your best self for you and for your kids, to find that space and find that time, because I didn't know I needed it until I got divorced. And then when I got divorced, I was like, oh, I'm so much better. I can be more present because I had a breather of a couple of days. And so I pray you get that, right? And you get that time, or lean on your village so that you can take that time, because there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So what do you think are some necessary components for healthy co-parenting? Like, co-parenting, I believe, really has a lot to do with how your divorce happened and how you split, how you communicate, the boundaries you set. But, what would you say are some components that are necessary to do it well?
For me, I think boundaries are a necessity.
Yeah.
I found that because, after the divorce, we're actively dating. Both of us are actively dating. So the calls early in the morning are a no-no. That's a boundary. The just showing up, that's a boundary. So the boundaries are important, um, when you're trying to develop this co-parenting regimen. What is that going to look like? Communication is important. If something happens with the child when they're with you, it's important that you communicate that to the other parent and vice versa. Again, we're co-parenting, so this is a different kind of partnership that we're in.
Yeah.
So communication is still key, although we're not cohabitating together. We still have this individual or these individuals that we're responsible for, and so we got to make sure that there are open lines of communication within those boundaries that we set.
So let me ask you about the boundaries, right? Because I feel like sometimes you don't know you need the boundary until a boundary has been crossed. And then it's like, oh, no, we're not doing that, right? Now it's like, oh, okay, we need to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
What are some things that's like, oh, this is something I ran into that I learned that, oh, we need to do something different.
Good. That's really good, because I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because it was business as usual. Something happens. It's 6:00 in the morning. I'm getting up. I'm getting the kid ready, or I know you're getting up. You're getting the kid ready. My ex called me in the morning, and my new boo.
So it's like, wait a minute.
Was like, hold on.
Hold on.
Wait a minute.
Right.
Why is he calling this? Like, doesn't he think that that's inappropriate? And I thought, like, no, he's calling me about our kid, and, it's fine. He said, no, it's not fine.
Yeah.
Like, do you call him in the morning?
Right.
So now we have a situation in our household. His household is uninterrupted because you don't do that. But yours, now we're having to have this conversation. And so I didn't know that boundary needed to be set.
Yeah.
Until that conversation
Until it happened.
Until it happened.
Yeah. I think that's good, because I think a lot of times, I know in dating, people will ask you certain questions. Well, how involved are you with your ex, and do you communicate with your ex? And in the beginning, it's like, I talk to him when I have to, only about the kids, usually via text, until he does something. Then it's like, oh, okay, I got to fix something. We got to have a conversation, right? Yeah. And so, and I know, Shantae, tell me a little bit for you. Your kids are a little older. You've been in this for a little while. You seem to have a really healthy co-parenting situation. How did you get there?
Well, I'll start by saying, like, as we all know, the divorce process is just so awful. It's like, it's a horrible thing to go through something, trying to end something, and still have to move on. Like, you still have to work with this partner, like you said in the beginning. So there's levels to it.
Yeah.
And it started with me learning to take the emotion out and deal with the facts, deal with what needed to happen. Our kids have always been top priority for us. That's how we managed in the marriage. So coming out of the marriage, we still kept the kids first. To maintain a healthy relationship post marriage. It was like, okay, remove the emotion out of everything. This is what we're dealing with. Facts only. and I dealt with the emotion on my own. That's the healing process. So as I learned to heal from things, I also learned that I still have to deal with this man. So all the things that drove me crazy in the marriage, if I allow it to drive me crazy after the marriage, then that's on me.
That's good.
That's good.
So we're still working through all the things that we had issues with in our marriage. It's just that we're no longer attached.
Yeah.
So the expectation is different, or there's less of an expectation, which is often what's needed in the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you go into the marriage with these ideas of how things should be instead of accepting each other or learning one another beforehand. And then when it blows up, it's just like, oh my goodness,
Right, what am I
you got a
doing with
mess
this?
on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's really good. That's really good. I think too, it also has a lot to do with the two individuals, right? Like how mature you are, and a lot of times, unfortunately, that's the reason you might go separate ways. But I totally resonate with just as early as last week, I was really frustrated in a situation with my ex, and I thought, this is why I left, right? But guess what? I still got to deal with it, and I have to check myself and say, how am I going to respond? What boundaries am I going to set? Am I even going to engage in a back and forth? I'm not arguing with you. This is why I left you. You know what? Keep doing what you're doing, right? Yeah. Because as long as it doesn't truly impact my kids, or sometimes it does, and you can't control the other person. You know, one of the things I learned too is when the kids go over to the other house, I can't control that space. You know, I'm so used to when your mom and they're in the house and they're with you, things like that. You get to monitor and be a buffer. But when they're over there, I don't run that, and that was a process I had to learn. Like, okay, I can't, whatever happens over there, as long as they're safe, as long as they're fed and they're not being neglected, I got to let him run it the way he runs it. So tell me, from your perspective, I know a little different, but still, is there any connection? Like, how do you feel running as a single mom, right? How would you say that it's working for your daughter? Like, is she aware of her dad? Like, how's that working for you to manage that relationship?
So it's a really good question. And it really is about communication and letting her know that regardless of the relationship that didn't work out between the two of us, that she is still loved and that she is still an important piece of our lives. And I even talked to her about her being an important piece of his life. And maybe this is a time for him to heal and he's not really gotten there yet, which I can't speak to his side of things. I can only move on because life moves on with her and she's still growing and she's in this stage. She's 15 now. So she's trying to define who she is and what that looks like in her life and just making sure that she has an understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like. So I don't talk badly about him in front of her, regardless to how I feel, or the fact that he's not seeing her. But I still ask, hey, have you talked to him? Have you called your dad? Have you texted your dad? So I still give her those options to let her know that he's still there. He just may not be present, but he's still there.
Yes, so good.
So I think that's the key, is making sure you have positive communication with your children because you don't want their feelings or your feelings to become their feelings because they'll grow and develop their own perspective on how they feel about that parent. And you don't want to be an influence on that. At least I don't. No. I don't want to be an influence on that.
No, that's good. And I try to do the same thing. It's funny. I have my mom as my example. Irregardless of how I feel about my dad, she never said anything ill about my dad. She let me come up with my own view of who he was or who he wasn't. And, eventually I saw it for myself. And so now that I never thought I'd be in this situation, I'm very mindful of that. Like, okay, I'm gonna let them come up with their own interpretation, build their own relationship. The difference, of course, is they have their dad. I didn't. But no, I think that's so key. And I applaud you for that because that's really, really key so that she can grow and she can reach out and that space is still there for them to grow together. But let's take a little bit of a turn and let me ask you guys, because we were all married. Tell me about the family. So, co-parenting is one thing, but then you've got like in-laws, maybe it was a mother-in-law, a father-in-law, maybe a sister-in-law or something like that, where you also had a relationship, right? and then things kind of went sideways, and then your children have this relationship with these people as well. Have you do you have any perspective or stories or something that worked really well for the in-laws, because they're a part of it as well?
Mhm. So for me, the in-laws are out of state,
Mhm.
so that makes it a little. You really have to orchestrate the
Connection.
connection.
Mm-hmm.
But there are phone calls all
Mhm.
the time. Visits during school breaks happen, and so there's still that connectivity between the in-laws. It's just my mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because my parents are deceased, and
Mhm.
so they don't have that side of the family. But
Mhm.
there's still that connectivity between the children and their grandparents.
That's good.
Yeah, it's
That's
good.
good.
It's
Yeah.
good.
What
Yeah.
about you?
Same. Well, similar, but our family on both sides, they're both out of state. We've always lived away from family,
Mm-hmm.
but both, or my ex-husband's family has always engaged with our children.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But as for me, when we parted ways, I just, one of the bigger lessons I learned was that love doesn't dissipate.
That's good.
So if it was real, it'll be real after the marriage as
Mm-hmm.
well. So any relationships that I had that was genuine,
Mm-hmm.
they're still there.
They're still there.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's good. That's
Mhm.
good. What about you?
Same. So in-laws are out of town.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different because they're a bit older.
Mm.
So it's I guess it's a little more challenge. I guess that adds a little more challenge to it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as a relationship, it's not there,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it's on either side. I just think time is just kind of
Yeah. It
came
happened.
into play, and they're growing older as people, so
Mm-hmm.
it may be a little more difficult for them to like maintain a relationship with a younger person.
Sure.
So if that
Mhm.
makes sense, but I wouldn't say there is any bad blood there. I would just say I know they still love her.
Mhm.
It's just the connection
Yeah.
is
And it's
different.
hard when they're out of town, right? You have to
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
super intentional. Like for me,
Mhm.
it's the
Yeah.
opposite. So I'm not from here. So all of his family is here.
Yeah.
All my family is out of state. And so it's
Mhm.
very like be intentional, like, hey, you've got cousins and you've got aunties and
Mhm.
uncles and things like that. And making sure that they can make that connection and connect with them and stuff like that is
Mhm.
it's work. It's
Yeah.
extra, it's a little extra, especially when you
Yeah.
only have them every other weekend. So you gotta plan and say, okay, what does this look like?
Yeah.
But let me ask you another question about dating. So, there's this conception too when you get a divorce and you give yourself time to heal and you get your feet are under you and you start dating.
Mhm.
What's the right time to introduce your kids to whoever, right? And maybe that's different, but have you done it? And do you have a timeline, or what is your I will introduce somebody when this happens?
So I don't know that I had a timeline per
Okay.
se. I just knew when it was the right time.
Okay.
And so I had dated prior to the person that's in my life,
Okay.
and my kids never met him.
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
I guess you kind of know when people are going to be temporary
Mm-hmm.
and when they're not. And
Mhm.
so those people that I knew were going to be temporary, they didn't deserve to meet my children.
There you go.
And so for the person that is in my life, I don't. That's interesting. When did I decide that he should meet my children?
Yeah. Did he say something? Did he do something?
Um, no, I just we started spending more and more time together. He started occupying more and more of my time.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the phone with him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they knew who I was on the phone with or who I was going out with.
Yeah.
And so who is this mystery person?
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
are we going to meet this mystery person?
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened. I don't know if it was a year. It was probably 6 months to a year in.
Okay.
And it wasn't like a formal, hey, I want you to meet. It was
Right.
just he came over and I said, this is so and so, and
Did you say this is my boyfriend?
No, I just said this is so
My
and so
friend?
because they had heard the name.
Got it.
Being
Yeah.
bounced around, and so
Yeah.
they knew. Okay, so this is the person who she's going out with.
And
This
who
is the
she's
person
talking
she's
to.
talking to on the phone.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so now we can put a name with the face.
Right.
And I have all boys,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
boys are kind of like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
just
They,
not.
they're a little territorial.
Yeah,
They
just
protect
kind of
mom.
like,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
talk about it later, mom.
Right. We're not gonna do it right
We're
now.
not gonna do it right
Not
now.
right
We'll,
now.
we'll-
Right.
yeah, we'll talk
We
about
fill
this
him
later.
out and see what we like.
But
yeah.
there was no specific time frame. I didn't give a time frame.
Mhm.
I just let it happen organically.
Okay, I like that. I like
Mhm.
that. Either one of you introduce or have like some indicators of like, okay, this is time.
I would say, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
when I feel safe.
Mhm.
One, when I feel safe enough
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
introduce you to my children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not many will get the privilege.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Right.
Mhm. Yep.
But when I feel safe, and I too, my son is older, he's 16.
Mhm.
So there's been a time where I have to let him know where I am because
Yeah.
he wants to know where his mom is.
For
And I
sure.
think he should know.
Yeah.
And who I'm spending my time with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're taking my time away from my children, or if I'm sharing my time with you
Yeah.
Yeah.
enough for my kids to ask and want to know,
Mm-hmm.
you can know who they are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Or they can know who you are, or vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's about when you and that other person understands what it is that you two have 1st.
Mhm.
So I think there isn't a timeline because at this age, things are different. Timing
sure.
is different, right?
For sure.
So I just think when you have identified that this is something special,
Yeah.
is when you can introduce, or I think it would be safe to introduce your children to who you're seeing because they are occupying a lot of your time, and you don't want to have to pick between them and your children, or vice versa, or you don't want your children to feel that they're secondhand sources because you have this new person in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think when I get there.
When you get there, right, right.
When I
No,
get
that's good. No, same for all. Like, I don't think there's a timeline. At first, I thought there would be.
Yeah.
I dated someone for a while, and I was like, okay. I was like, no, and we both have to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
he had to be comfortable. I had to be comfortable. Similar. It was a real informal introduction and testing the waters, and there were little things like he helped my son with his homework and stuff like that. Just see, but my son is 10 and he wasn't 10 at the time. And, he's super territorial.
Right.
He was just like, who is this? I was like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later, And then he started asking, well, where is he? And I'm like,
Yeah.
also not going to talk about it. Right.
Right.
So no, I think it's just, you got to feel it out and feel what's a good rhythm. What do you do? And you might not have been in this situation, but let's just say hypothetically, what do you do when your kid doesn't like the guy? Like, there's this balance for me. It's like, I'm an adult. You're going to be gone in so many years.
Yeah.
And I have to make decisions because I already did it once and it didn't work out well. Right. So I got to make the right decision for me. But I want you to, obviously, my kids are always going to be a part of my life.
Yes.
So how do you find and then they're kids, right? So their reason to not like might not be a good reason, or it could be a very good reason. How do you determine, is that a deciding factor? If my kids don't like you, then you're out the door, or we gonna sit and talk and think about that for a minute?
That's a really
Yeah.
good question. I would always ask why.
Yeah.
So what is it that you don't like? Why don't you like this person?
Yeah.
Has this person done anything to you? Is there something that you observed between the two of us that made you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
So I think having those conversations are important. And then just explaining to them that, mama got needs.
Come on.
Okay.
Yes, she does. Right.
Mama got needs.
Right,
Like,
right.
I'm not going to have someone around you in our space that's not good for us.
That's right. Absolutely.
And so I need you to trust me,
Mm-hmm.
in this situation. Now, if there's anything that ever happens that I need to be aware of,
Let me know.
let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. for
Because
sure.
you all are the most important things.
Right.
And so, you know, I mean, that's just the approach that I would take.
Yeah, having
Yeah.
that conversation.
Yeah, just having that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Same.
Same.
I think it's really about having the conversation and understanding why
Mm-hmm.
the child may not like the person you're seeing because maybe they see something that you don't see and have that
Yeah.
special insight. So just really understanding that, or and also understanding is they're not my dad, so I don't want someone in my space,
Yeah.
you know, occupying my mom's time, and really talking through that and understanding that and making them feel comfortable
Yeah.
on both sides, because it can be uncomfortable for the other person as well,
Mhm.
knowing that a child doesn't like them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then the child can respond and react negatively or even positively.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about having a true conversation and setting those boundaries with your child to let them know that I understand that you have feelings, but so do I. And your life goes on, and mine needs to as well. And explaining to them about, like, maybe when they start dating,
Yeah.
you may not like who they're with, but it's not your choice to decide for their lives. But you can respect the situation and respect the relationship and still live on.
Yeah.
And have those healthy boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's boundaries is so such a big thing now, right? Like you knew boundaries, but I really need boundaries since I've been whether for my ex, for my kids, for my whoever I'm dating, like you know, and really articulating those and not realizing what needs to go up until till something happens. You know, that's really good. So another question I always have when it comes to co-parenting is managing. Here we go, and I'll give a story, right? But it's managing the money, right? And we're all in different situations, right? Whether we get support financially or we don't get support. I personally think support or not, it's never 50-50. Right? It's never going to be, oh, right down the middle. Somebody's going to pay more. Somebody's going to cover a couple things extra. It's always going to be that. But I'll tell a story. I have a friend who she gets child support. It's a very nominal fee, right? And her daughter wanted to get her hair done, and she said, "All right, but it has to be under $100." I think it's reasonable, right? And the daughter was like, "Well, where's the child support?" I would say, let's square up because you'd have lost. Now, I don't have girls. My whole disposition would have changed. I have boys. But that was the response that she got. And then you know that, okay, that came from somewhere, right? The child didn't come up with that all on her own. And so there's a conversation that has to happen with the daughter as well as the other parent. But, you know, have you guys gone into situations financially where like, oh, we need to throw the flag? Like, wait a minute, you know, things are different. But do you think, the first question is, do you think child support or not, whether you receive it or not, it's fair for a child to ask about what are you doing with the child support? So that's the first question. Can a child ask you, what you doing with the child support?
Absolutely
not.
I will toss the tables in the temple. What the?
Absolutely not.
Right?
No.
Let me recant that.
Okay.
Can they ask? Yes.
Okay.
Can it be perceived as out of place? It could, depending on the tone. But if it's an innocent question, I don't see, you know, if you're coming from me and you're my child, then it's a problem.
We squaring up.
If you're asking a question, then that's different. Let's have a conversation about this support that you think that I'm receiving, that you are entitled to, that you think you're entitled to.
Right.
So, you know, it could be a conversation. It could be a square up.
Yeah. And I think, and like child support is such a touchy subject for people because, you know, guys are like, oh, I don't want you to have child support to be going to do your hair and nails. Like, I'm not going to say this on what I was going to say, but I was getting my hair and nails done before, right? Like that ain't got nothing to do with these little couple dollars that you throw this way, right? So please get over yourself. But then it's when it comes to the kid trying to understand. And I think, yeah, if you come at me the right way, sure, we'll have a conversation. But if you're challenging me on how I'm spending my dollars and you don't have a W-2 and you didn't get divorced. But anyway, what's your perspective? Sorry.
I think mine is a little different because for me, she actually receives it.
Okay.
Because I think it's partly I'm teaching her I guess, financial responsibility.
Yeah.
So she gets to keep a small portion of it.
Okay.
And the rest of it goes into savings for college fund,
Okay.
savings. So, and it's not that it's a drastic amount of money,
Yeah.
but it actually teaches her how to balance a budget and do like have fun money and then have savings money and to be able to look at what I'm growing in the bank.
No,
So
that's good.
it's a little different. We have it a little.
So before you started that, how did you initiate? Like, did she ask the source of this? Is this mom just giving the money? Or, hey, this money your dad gave you and I'm going to give you a portion of it. Like, how did you initiate and set that up?
So I initially set it up in the beginning. I didn't want the child support.
Okay.
Because it's for her, and I think she needed to see it.
Okay.
Right. So I had a conversation with her to say, here's your amount that you're going to get. Here's the amount that you get to keep per month as an allowance, like an allowance that you can have fund money. But this other portion we're going to save, and it's going to be put into an account for you for college. And she really understands that, and she manages it, right? So it's direct deposit into her account, and she knows how to transfer funds here and there.
Okay.
And she never surpasses the amount that she's entitled to,
That is good.
although it's all going into her account. So I think from that perspective, it's teaching her, again, financial responsibility.
No, I love that.
So it's just a little bit different.
No, that's good. That's good. No, I love that. We had a episode about money and financial responsibility and what to teach your kids and things like that. And I think that's fantastic. I just don't want everybody to challenge me on what I'm doing. I don't get child support, so I'll put that out there. I don't even get it, so it isn't an issue for me. But, if someone were to ask, I'd be like, how you ask matters, right?
Exactly.
It's how you ask. And I think that you should teach your kids about money. I think that that's something maybe in our community, my mom didn't teach me that much about budgeting and finances and things like what I need to be doing at certain points in my life. So I'm really particular about teaching that to my kids. So I love that you do that as well.
Great. That's great.
Yeah, that's good. So before we wrap up, anything else that you think, like something that a story you had, something that you went through in your co-parenting journey, parenting journey in general, that, like, oh my gosh, let me tell you this story. Like, you got a good story of, maybe it's a successful story, maybe it's a funny story, but something that you have experienced as being a co-parent or parent overall. And if not, that's okay too.
Well, I'll share. Okay, so this is recent, this week actually, and my ex is traveling for work, and sometimes he shares stories, and when he's telling me the story, I'm like, typical. This is how I know how he acts and how he responds to certain things. So when he shared it, I was just like, oh, okay, and I let him go on about his day. And then the next day, like, I've learned to hold my responses and think about it. And then when I deliver the message, he's like, wow, you said that, it's well received because I sat on it and you take the emotion out of it and you get a better result when you deal with things, when you're calm. And so just, that's a success story for me because I'm learning how, whenever you can successfully communicate something to someone that you hadn't been able to, I don't know, it's like a magical wall between us. It had been to where the messages just, they couldn't come through. We couldn't connect. So whenever I can get my message, my point across, it's just like, win.
Yeah.
Win.
Yeah. That's good. Now, here's a question I have too, and this might be a little outside of co-parenting, but when do you find what is your process to remove the emotion? Because some things are triggers, right? Because it's like, oh, this is why, right? So what's your process to take the emotion out? Like for me, I can say I can't respond right away. I might leave you on read for a minute and I need to go think, pray, talk to Shantae. I don't know. I need a minute because what my initial response is visceral and I'm going to leave you with a lot of 4-letter words, right? But what's your process to get the emotion out of your response?
You just said it. Think about when you receive that email at work. When we're working and you receive an email and it's just like, ooh. And then at some point in your life and in your career, you learn to just not respond.
Yep.
I'm not going to engage in this.
Yep.
And then when the time is right, and it just flows, and it's like not coming from a place of anger.
Yeah.
So, and I've learned in order to maintain a certain level of peace,
Mm-hmm.
I have to do everything out of love.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and that comes with patience, that comes with gentleness, that comes with kindness.
Yeah.
You know, you respond to things differently,
Yeah.
and it keeps you peaceful
Right.
inside,
Mhm.
and the other person receives it better. Whomever you're
Yeah.
dealing with is well received
Yeah.
or better
Mhm.
received.
That's good.
That's real
That's
good.
good.
No, I 110% agree. One thing I will say is it's not, I'm not going to communicate. I'm not going to respond because I have this whole issue with no response, right? But I just need a minute,
Yeah.
right? Because I think you have to come back and address things. Because I know personally, like if I let something go too long, then I'm gonna get to blowing up, and that's not gonna be good for anybody, right? So it's like, not right now. I'm gonna put it on pause and to your point, and come back and address it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts or suggestions or stories about co-parenting or funny stories? No. Okay. All right. No, that's good. That's good. That's good. Well, no, we appreciate you guys tuning in today with Can I Say This with Blasette. Hopefully you got something out of it. I'm going to leave you with a question for sure. And that is, what have you done in your co-parenting scenario that has been successful that maybe you can pass on to somebody else? Or if you're not in that situation, what are you doing in your marriage relationship with your other co-parent that is working well? Think about that and maybe share that with somebody else to make all of our community more fruitful, communicate, and connect better. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys next time with Can I Say This?